I read a book! Full disclosure, this is a sponsored post. I was commissioned to read and review the following book. But all of these thoughts and feelings and opinions are 100% honest and my own. Kim here, welcome back. I read a book. Over this weekend, I read the novella Watch Over Me by Jenny Dawson. I was really surprised by this, you guys. This isn't my normal genre. I read a lot of romance back like in my formative adult years, post-high school, early college, that kind of thing. Kind of the genre that really got me into just binge reading things. This novella really surprised me because I was expecting to kind of like it fine. I really enjoyed it. This one is a really interesting romance. It is a clean romance, which I found really nice because sometimes you kind of need the sex in a romance story, but sometimes you don't. And this book, you definitely didn't need it. Like, it wasn't without because it didn't have it. It just made it really, really sweet. And so I kind of liked that. Before you get too far into this review, if you haven't watched my video on how I rate books, you might want to check that out first because I do have my own system. I don't really like stars. There's the video for how I rate books. This novella follows the story of Brenda. She's a single mom to a 7-year-old daughter who has Down syndrome. Her husband left her when her daughter was born because she had Down syndrome. This is a story about Brenda's journey to healing and finding her way back to love, which I actually really liked. Watch Over Me got a total score of 14 out of 20, which sort of translates to 4 stars on Goodreads. I was expecting to like it. I wasn't expecting to really as often as I did. Watch Over Me received the following scores. The writing and style got a 2 out of 4, the characters got a 2 out of 4, the story got a 3 out of 4, the pacing got a 4 out of 4, and the ending got a 3 out of 4, giving it its overall score of 14 out of 20. I really enjoyed that this book was kind of a journey. I enjoyed that this book was not just about the romance aspect of it, that was kind of how Brenda learned to love again, not so much just the bulk of the plot. It was sort of, it wasn't really a plot device or anything like that. It's just that in figuring out how to heal and learn some things, love sort of led her through that. And I really enjoyed that aspect of this story. So let's break down these categories. The writing and style got a 2 out of 4. Mainly because it read like an indie book. It still had a lot of remaining typos and things like that just get really distracting as you're reading along. That being said, the overall tone and style didn't read like an indie book. I'm not saying that indie books are bad by any means. It's just that sometimes they have a sort of tone that says, hey, I'm trying to be a writer, but I'm not quite there yet with my own voice. This definitely had its own voice. This story definitely had its own style, and the story definitely had its own tone and all those things. The only thing that really made it feel like an indie book were the remaining typos inside, which really isn't that big of a deal. Like, it's not that it made anything confusing by any means, just that they were there and they kind of make you go, oh, okay, and you move on. Not a big deal though. I'll also say with the writing and style that sometimes it got a little inner monologue heavy with Brenda's thought process. Sometimes it bordered on telling instead of showing. There were just a few times when Brenda was sort of figuring things out and like on a mental journey that I just could have rather, instead of just hearing her thoughts about it, I think it just would have been a little more engaging if the author had given us a few, just had them happen with actions instead of just having Brenda go, oh, but if I I can love. I just needed Brenda's journey to kind of unfold with what was happening in the story instead of a chunk of inner monologue. The last thing I'll say about the writing and style is something I kind of touched on before, was the fact that it is a clean romance, and I feel like that really added to the story because you've got a 7-year-old with Down syndrome involved. You've got a single mom who's trying to just be such a good person towards her ex-husband and such a good mom for her daughter, and trying to also now be a good in a new relationship, and to be good at that as well. And she's just a really sweet character, and so I feel like the fact that it was a clean romance added to the story. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it's like, hey, spice it up a little bit. This is kind of boring, but it wasn't at all boring, and it didn't need that. I don't like when a book doesn't need it and has the sex in it, and I don't like when a book needs the sex and doesn't have it. This wasn't like that at all. This didn't need the sex, and it wasn't there, and the story was all the better for it. I gave the characters a 2 out of 4 for a few reasons. Mainly because there was an unnecessary character. I really enjoyed that a few of our characters had some significant disabilities. We've got Down syndrome, we've got a mother dealing with depression, we have an ex-husband who has anxiety problems and alcoholism. And so that was, for lack of a better word, refreshing. Like, it's just nice that the disabilities weren't glossed over, that it's a part of their lives and it's a part of how they function and it's a part of why they are the way that they are. And that's how real life is. Like, that's how disability is. Like, disability doesn't necessarily define you, but it's still a part of you. I feel a little bit like the mother's depression was used kind of as a plot device to sort of keep her distanced from the story. Brenda is very close with her father, and her daughter is very close to her grandpa. He plays a prominent role in the story, which I really loved. However, I feel like it wasn't entirely necessary for the mother to have depression and that's why she wasn't around. I just felt like it could have been done a little differently, or her depression could have been talked about. Like in the beginning, oh, she has depression, it's really sad, and that's why we don't see her a lot. And I kind of felt like the depression was used as a tool to keep her out of the story, and so I felt like that could have been done differently. I also felt like the sister Bella, while a very, very fun character, wasn't entirely necessary. It is a novella, so you've got a limited amount of time to tell your story. So the more characters you have, the more complicated that's gonna get. And I feel like she didn't really add anything to the plot. She was just kind of there, sort of almost as comedic relief, but she really wasn't funny enough to be comedic relief. I feel like she could have been lifted right out of the story and you wouldn't even notice. Like, it wouldn't change it one way or the other. And so while she was fun, she wasn't necessary. But I really did like how disability came into play in the story. I loved Camilla, the little 7-year-old daughter. She was sweet and adorable and real, and I love how her and her mother argue about school. I love how she doesn't like to eat lettuce. I just thought she was a delight, a pure delight. And I also really liked Brenda because I feel like she was a very realistic protagonist. I feel like while she's on her journey back to love, she is also very human and very real, and it wasn't just all roses and perfect, oh, I'm in love with the new neighbor guy. It was, I gotta deal with him and I have to deal with my ex and I have to do what's best for my daughter in the process, and she's wondering if she should be dating with a daughter. I just felt that she was very real and very relatable, and I thought she was sweet, and I thought she was a great protagonist for the story. I gave the story a 3 out of 4. Like I said, I actually really enjoyed that it was more of a journey to healing than just a love story. Love is what led Brenda. Also, Alan, the love interest in the story, he kind of is on a journey as well. And I really, really liked that. I really, really liked that they were on a journey to healing and finding love, and with each other is kind of how they get there. I thought that it was an interesting way to do it. I thought it was not a typical way to do a love story, and I just thought it was nice. Like, that's really the best way I can really describe it, is it was just nice. It was lovely and sweet and nice. Like, I don't want to say nice, like it was, I mean, it was kind of nice. No, it was nice. It was nice. Like, I liked it. If it were a movie, like, it would be described in the trailer as a feel-good story, because it is. Like, it's very warm and tender and nice. The pacing got a 4 out of 4. It moved perfectly for a novella. It sailed right along. It didn't really lag anywhere. The story just progressed. There were just a few chunks of inner monologue that really didn't affect the pacing as much as the style of storytelling. So I didn't knock any off for pacing because it didn't slow the story down at all. It was just a different way of telling it. But it didn't mess with the pacing of it, and so I just thought it was perfectly paced. The ending got a 3 out of 4. As always, my reviews are spoiler-free, so I won't give you any spoilers to the ending. It left me feeling hopeful and excited for the main characters and for like the rest of their lives. It didn't get a perfect score with the ending just because I felt like the ex-husband and the way he dealt with what happened at the end was slightly unrealistic. That is not how it normally goes. That's why it got a 3 out of 4 on the ending, just because his character lost a little bit of realism to me that I felt like he kind of had up until then. And that gave the book a 14 out of 20. Just a few final thoughts on this book. I thought it was sweet, and I thought it was heartwarming, and I thought it was tender. I'd recommend it. I thought it was great. I thought it was lovely and nice. I know I've said nice like 1,000 times, but that's really the best way to describe this story. Is just lovely and nice, and it's a good read if you need something fluffy, even though I wouldn't define it as fluffy at all, because there is a real journey in this book with Brenda and with Alan, I feel like, and it brought them together, and it was so nice to read. It was just so nice to read. I'll try to remember to leave a linky link for the book in the description below. That's gonna do it for this review. As a reminder, I was commissioned to read and review this book. As always, thanks so much for watching. Consider subscribing if you haven't already, and think about hitting that little bell button next to the subscribe button so YouTube tells you when I've posted a new video, because sometimes they don't do that. I'll see you next time.